Sanje Chodam Fojo
Soki Jonam La Janju Badu Dagi Gapsu
Daji
Dagi
Chijin
Chunin Gipe Sokam Ki Jonam Banja Sange Drupa Sho
Sanje Chodam
Chodam Soki Jonam La Janju Badu Dagi Gapsu Chi Dagi Chunin Gipe Sokam Ki Jonam Banja Sange Drupa Sho Sange Chodam Soki Jonam La Janju Badu Dagi Gapsu Chi Dagi Gipe Sokam Jonam Jolam Panja Sange Drupa Sho
Dayantan
Gate para sam gate bodhi swaha Tayata gate para sam gate bodhi swaha Tayata gate para sam gate bodhi swaha
Ola so da kanje simje tamje go do tobjala na ma je ba sanje kombar ma ba da tamen do toba ma do na tamen do toba jige de toba la ya ane janju go simbe joba na chushi de nyao to lang go de an de ni ba ya ane de janju simbe joba na chushi nyao to lang go na go ba yin za ane lang wa le shen go le she ba de tyo le de ji shung ma no ko de ane ka su ba ba de ge se jebe ane shung ge bo da bo ane and Junju Shungi Ten, gets some shivers of a Junju and the Tesha to be digging some such.
So then we, as usual, begin by setting our motivation to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to be of maximum benefit to all sentient beings. Of course, we know that to gain this state, we need to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, we need to have a thorough understanding of what they are about. And we can only gain this understanding by relying upon an unmistaken presentation and unmistaken text. And so it is with this in mind today that we are here to listen to some words from that which is often regarded as one of the king of mind training texts, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life as composed by the great master Shantideva.
And then been a shit and do la chicaso de choice said that we were in some what and then rang it to be Nangala and more and the teacher Lama Yimbala Naba Tabjela to Jim Bottom, but Tomba Shaja to watch set up and Dombati and Shaji Chani and Casade, yes, and a union jacket and a Tuzeko Lusana, Kula Chugu moment to so. What in the Takaja Musubakora, yes, and so what in a combacha.
And likewise, as we normally do, we set up the representation of the merit field in the space in front of us, in actual fact, our own root guru, in aspect, the greatly compassionate and skillful in means one Shakyamuni Buddha, who has one face and two hands, seated in the Vajra posture, and with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra, and the left hand in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. So we have a clear visualization of the Buddha who, in our mind, is actually present.
Rangi Tagotoya, and a rangi Rangla Tinchewe, that's it, Pamane Cheve, and a Pipija Drobo Dromo. Last of the Takanish Pamega Senja, Takanish Daytona Ranki or Rantona Deki making on the Tamir Dasit. Then and Jim Taibe, Magin, Simja, George, took a Simja, and Massa of Mewa, some of Combacha. Chijamaluba, Chasan, some of Combacha.
And similarly, we visualize in the space all around us are all kind, mother, sentient beings, beginning with our parents and our relatives, our friends, our loved ones, those who are then neutral to us, those who are, for one reason or another, termed or labeled as enemy in this life. And indeed, we include all of the residents of the 6 realms of existence. And we are clear that they are all present without exception.
What did I say? 아니 랑게 뒤나 안 둥게 나가라 세데베 라마 투바 옹보티 아니 지워 옴가보 제바 아모보 투가 호모보 이게 숨지 세탑 안 투가 혼래 왜세 빠도 매버 트네다 그래서 초주의 신람자네 20바 다 온라인에 제바 젠장 아니 젠장에 20바티야 아니 라마 투바 옹보 나바 젠지 젠장에 아니 라마 투바 옹보 아니 다 같이 구순토라 바 팀네 아니 왔다 된게 20번 당 20번 무슨 쉬네 왔다 된게 유대가 지는 원래 원고 출라마 제조는 원래 미주로 우제되게 어떻게 공부하셔
And bringing our attention to the visualized Buddha in front, we see that the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha is marked by the Om at the crown, A at the throat, and the syllable Hung at the heart center. From that Hung at the center, light rays begin to emanate, going out into the pure realms and inviting back the wisdom beings and empowering deities from their natural abodes. The wisdom beings arrive in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha and dissolve into the central figure, while the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment. And from that consecration, then some of the nectar overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
어디로 공부하셔 아니 랑가 타고도 마게 심자 탐제기 딱간제제 타고요 마게 심자 대다 단자 리주스도 동엔 나셔봐 가이 봐 나방 말아서 나신제 남주여 되게 라마토베 뭐 구손토베 연대 삼마땅토게 연대 ngo트토게 예바도 ngo트네 아니 디 구손토게 연대 제베코네 다외다와 이지게 때와 원도게 때와서 둘이 되게 어디로 공부하셔
And so that's all of the beings surrounding us, all of the beings of the 6 realms of existence, the kind mother sentient beings surrounding us, of course, are experiencing all of the sufferings relative to the realms that they are in. And yet they are able to cognize their reality, their situation here with a human intelligence, a human kind of awareness. And therefore, they are able to, on the one hand, appreciate the fine qualities of an enlightened being, the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, and are inspired by that into generating the pure faith, the manifest faith, and the faith of conviction.
어디래체 당연히 신기 지금 라마 투명보게 구성도고 연대다 간제 지금 랑이 그세 신고여 봐 되게 봐 카도데 로라 차도 받잖아요 저거 란직받아 탐제 저와 현직받아 저 탈레켜와 굴라 투지 정말 예를 봐 좋아 펜타마다 탐제가 변쟁에 다 지금 변배 연대 되게 봐 점받잖아 아니 되게 와다 연대 되게 아니 가서다 아니 가서다 가서데 로라 차바체 어디르잖아 아니 되네베 그 대박 가서다 덴베기 제수 롬되다 아니 심젤라 비비야 지동에 나서 삼라다 텔레 닝제 아니 대다 동에 교대 잡아서 전화 집으로 저와 쇼제 저와 다게 지게 대다 전화 너무 투병 뭐 징길라도서 세원 대다하자는 대화다 대외 교대 잡아야 되는 집으로 대바 교제 대바 쇼제 대바다 대다 전화 너무 투병 뭐 징길라도서 소다 근데 세메 시디가 강투도 삼로 땅전에 아니 되게 소소가 덤발을 순대체 아니 랑게 가서다 어떻게 가서다 다 가자죠 이게 대다 동네 탐자세요 대화 탐자죠 하나 따뇨를 내봐 왔다 된데 용역이 돌아 아니 가서다 랑게 dum바께잖아 아니 와서 가서다 다 가자 저기 dum바께잖아 다 가자 대다 용역 주고 짜게 저기 진노버 라마라 징길라도 소 어떤데 순대체 어떤데
So that between ourselves and also all other sentient beings, again, having this deeper, as deep as possible appreciation of enlightened qualities of body, speech, and mind, of how an enlightened being has no fear of suffering in relation to themselves. They have no fear of suffering for others. They have also working for all others without bias and with a mind of great compassion, and work to benefit regardless of whether they receive any benefit in return. And that these then, we recall these qualities, we bring them to mind as much as possible to furnish that faith. And from that, then we kind of considering the suffering of all the sentient beings all around us, we cultivate the seed of compassion, thinking how wonderful it would be if all these sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of that suffering. May be the case. I will be the one to see that it is the case. So Guru, deity, please bless me to make this so. How wonderful it would be if all the sentient beings here had happiness and the causes of happiness. May it be the case. I will be the one to do this. Oh Guru, deity, please bless me to make it so. And so we continue with the four immeasurables, with the how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings have equanimity, free of attachment and anger, that wholesome, close, and utter assistance. May this be the case. And I will be the one to see that it is. May, oh Guru deity, please bless me to make this so. And we make this supplication to as heartfelt as we possibly can to the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front.
어디를 공부하셔야 아니 라마 투명 뭐 다 간제 저기 다른 거저기 저기 준주기 아니 퇴삼 지혜대 아니 라마 투명 뭐 공부 투배치도 라마 투명 뭐 심지어 탐제도 라마 투명 뭐 공부 못하면 탐모도 토바치기 탐모도 다 탐모도 대 토바치기 대자바이나 아니 심지어 감다 매봐 발내와 지다 하셔도 아니 가서도 다 kengu yoba yenza 아니 지금 가서도 셈제가 되는데 배멜 hun주 죽도 봐 배멜 hun주 죽도 봐 아니 지제 셈제가 되는 뭐주가 좀 배배도 뭐다 어디서 엔디서도 자주 셈배게 냠네 자주 셈마지 타마 자주 셈게 봐네 저발 말람네 탑요 말이야 그거 저발 락고 요래 저발 락고 요자 아니 되게 죄배 때문에 쇼 아니 다 지금 전주 쇼 내고도 거바디 뒤쳐도
And to kind of bring it into the context of what we are endeavoring to do here, in the context of the Bodhisattva's way of life, that we, through our study and through our reflection on the content of the Bodhisattva's way of life, our goal, of course, is to attain that same goal of the Guru Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and that state from which we can really understand the individual dispositions of sentient beings, their personalities, their karmic content, etc. And so that from that point of view, be best able to benefit. And so we're aiming to do this as much as we possibly can. And knowing also that from that point of view, that the benefit arises spontaneously and effortlessly from the side of the enlightened being. Of course, we are realistic in these aspirations because we understand that we cannot attain such a state without perfecting all the trainings of a bodhisattva. And so it is with this in mind that we make these supplications, that we make these, we generate these aspirations with the knowledge that we will enter into and engage in the trainings of the bodhisattva and perfect them. 적당기아탕 성추성아 오기 직직해서 니가 초기 두아 두발라성
다 니바 초기 두발라 숨자 초기 두발라 숨자 다 최셰도 최셰도 미루에 녀바베 리그 군조 로다 가자체 군조 로다 가자체 군조체 아니 내게서 가선 내게 선배 쳐봤다봐 아니 자첨불로 메바라 멤버라 차와 미자와 오셨다 가자 저거 다 가자 초기 진바지에 들라야 초기 진바지에 들라야 보다 아니 근데질에 초 친구를 했다 뭐고 가서 네데 군주고 돈에 근데질에 진벌 중국 말에 대대제 중들은 거 대대 중들 말았어. 와서 아니 네데 네 개발 시바잖아. Shebachene, and Chukimbataya, Chukutana Pimpatria. Or any judgeable by Yugula, member Tibaina, dear, take you the mayor. What did they care about the Sungudwa or subject Sunguna Sungudwa? What in the chat?
So the second main outline refers to the perfection of ethical conduct, and in this regard, the subheading within that of the gathering people through the Dharma. And this has three subheadings, and one is these are all related to instances where one is expounding or teaching the Dharma. And the first is that it's inappropriate in certain circumstances to teach the Dharma depending on the behavior and the presentation of certain listeners. And secondly, then an analysis of the particular situation with regard to those who are the receptacles of Dharma. And thirdly, how one shouldn't lead a person who has an aspiration for the great and vast into a lower vehicle.
What the channel, what the channel, I just get it. Kabashi beton, what that you would do that would the Lacasole. Geshe to Miruas and Yababe Lugu Kunjo de la Dublin, Critical Shadow Gobaris and Zawale, Magupala Chumishes. Minashin the Gotita, do the Kawatsundota, Goboyo Badala means.
And the first of these subheadings will become clear when we read the verse, which is number 88. It says, the Dharma should not be explained to those who lack respect, to those who, like sick men, wear cloth around their heads, to those holding umbrellas, sticks, or weapons, to those with covered heads.
That should the show more polasa, because the duck and the cheddar, and the gun is a chew more pola magubala, and a chumish chingsa. Misha Kuso Mimba Shintune, and the red duck and judge, the Chicasso Chula, Magube number 10, and the quality Chicasso that Takaja, Magube number 10, the Maguba Decheto. Maguba Decheto, Takaja, Gotibata. Takaja Gotibaya, so Nana say on the Gotiba, what mixer, what that in the mind bachana, and the Chicasso that Maguba Decheto, Colata, Colatical Reina, Shabuina, kind of Chicabayina, what did it? And Lala, Takajo, Tuta, Lala, Tuta, Kawatoba, Satan, because Magube Nabetona. Magube number 20, what I did the chat. Yakoba, Kabachena, Nizulogarwa, Magube Tone, Magube Tone, what I did. And that Magube Nabeton, any Kawatoba, Tana, Sanjatoba, Kawasanta, Magube Nabeton, Jabato, and the Sun, Dunga Jabat, and the Sun, Magube Nabatension, Tobata. Rela soba kola yobas nakaja ya soso ne nazara de onge ibada yana chesu chulo che nima tsabo yoba kobe onge kola re yo de ko ne su logarwa ti maguba de chido wo de ne chedo ina ta de de la ne ta kaso de ge ne chegela ne ta kaso de mero che shebar mino sa che shesa yuma imba sorche chebe tone de tenge de che shesa yuma res
So this verse refers to those who are either showing disrespect to the Dharma or to the one who is teaching the Dharma. And it can include those who have like wearing cloth on their heads, or as it says here, holding umbrellas or spears or weapons, or have their heads covered. Now, of course, all of these situations are referring to their kind of a deliberate showing of disrespect, whereas there are many exceptions whereby, of course, if somebody is ill, that would be an exception to wearing something to cover their head, or if they're in the hot sun, it only makes good sense to wear something over the head lest you get sunstroke, etc. And so there are like kind of every exception here to those instances that are mentioned, and they're mentioned in the context of their deliberately showing a disrespect.
他感觉就说这个确定了没办法，安那确了没办有个金证个，安那确不来可用哎，安等于用金证个，安那确年个多呢，安那刚突个，安那这个的告诉的就告诉的可用嘛，因为东的考这个的马下耶，不是都不那都这个的马下耶，这个就确了古巴点。 确定咋全部影响，俺确切个点，俺改全部自己呢，得来古巴点去。他我听得见了，他感觉就那刚啥的确改切完，他确咋全部修正嘛影响，俺得切个刚啥点来，俺古巴点去。第一段呢，确定有个有把影响，俺第古巴春节多，俺搞了热的嘛毕业，所以都不那都的嘛，都的嘛。 个是普巴的那嘛，个是的，他马步讲的下野，喇叭了卡瓦套的呢，卡瓦的马下野，东普个是春节咱们开的那去了古巴的，俺去瞧不了古巴春节多，俺个是他这他们他看来的马下讲的去年，俺热的呢，俺古巴春节多热马毕业。 我的，但现在去瞧不过，我但你们差不多，看了人家滚说说不了那个大事，是不是这么多送过多？ 我去了送去那对，哦，但你们差不多，看是哪有你都压布，你都有呢？这边呢过了项目管，这边呢是不能那个的，嘛那么个嘛，切吧不嘛哪玩哪呢？我打听的继续话是，嘛那说过去不上，用过的他个别我这里用过的，现在呢切吧不了，过把春节头，不切咋就不修正上，这了过把春，这个刚马下呢，原来呢马下见的。 And
so really it's kind of, we take this from a more proactive perspective, whereby you are going to attend a teaching, you already have great respect for and appreciation for the Dharma itself, and due to that one has the requisite respect and appreciation for the one who is teaching the Dharma. So you come into the space with that already well-founded respect, and therefore you are checking your own attire and your own behavior in that space. So if you're wearing a hat, you will take it off. If you have an umbrella, you will kind of close that umbrella, lay it down, and so on and so on. So that this is your proactive demonstration of respect for the Dharma and the one who is teaching the Dharma. And so this is like doing the best one can in keeping with that thought. This is the common sense reply. And of course, in many respects, maybe we have even experienced this, where a teacher is giving a teaching to a group, for example, and it's a very hot day. The actual teacher will advise the listeners to kind of put up your umbrellas to protect yourself from the heat of the sun, or wear a hat or put some cloth over your head, because otherwise you're in danger of getting ill or sick. So this often is kind of like the initiative comes from the teacher themselves. And of course, in that instance, there is no hint of disrespect at all.
가브레 also 코유다 안고 내당 가브레 유도 맞죠 내가 유도 맞죠 용은 안고 단념전 샤야르면도 오다 우주자는 그게 셰저도 더 지금 말이 가서 그 최대 팬도고 요바 인상 안고 내가 팬도가 뇌게 내가 요바는 그 내가 단념도 샤야르 다 몰라라잖아 오다 뒤처럼 매번 영화 쇼 가서나 처럼 매번 뭐 영화 있나 안디 동에 주대 제가 용투고 말이 근데 이 맞아 거든 인제 유도 따네 아니 거치 这个说的那个这个没完，我当年的下，我偏把当我接，让给我呢，他别个可能了，这个缺了没有的，缺了一季永远知道，让给另外一什么就把这米贵也不是的，我他今天在那个下起来嘛，可无数家也该要嘛的。
And so, of course, the key is here whether or not those who are coming to listen to a teaching or a Dharma have an aspiration to really hear and to kind of integrate what they hear. And so there may be from time to time instances where you're in a situation where you will not teach the Dharma because of that lack of a real interest or intent in those who are listening. And of course, even though one is, absolutely dedicated to the benefit of all sentient beings, it may be the case that it's a case of skillful means in some instances to remain sort of equanimous and to avoid teaching in that instant because it may actually be more harmful to those who aren't in kind of the right frame of mind to listen to a teaching. And so that, and then you of course, you make strong aspirational prayers that they will have the proper aspiration to really hear the Dharma itself, and to make that a very powerful dedication on your part, and to make sure that you show the proper example through your body, speech, and mind. Of what it means to be a practitioner of the Dharma and so on, but you have you just kind of for the time being withholding the Dharma until it's a more opportune time to teach.
开始用不多年节的，那怎么他的一些呢？来开始用这个多，但个是，可能是旁边做缺了，开始没把有个钱，缺了别台湾有没把有个钱，不过做了些到哪面去，不过做了到哪面，可是。乌族家呢，不过了，乌族家的多，乌族家都不过马个钱的多，对吧？有嘛的，是吧？但这里乌族家马个钱，可能对吧？有的，可能是example也不对的，没别也不对的。所缺的这玩呢，什么上的作业，弄来的用的作业，这个我的这个不可能用就说对吧？呢？哦，这也不有啥的，我是旁边的缺的到哪这玩呢？现在旁边的就修点数。你妈那卡查不有，他卡查我的名度，给这忙不是，给这读者这个忙不别知道，第二没把钱，别什么上不，不过隔离一万超过了哇，第没把钱呢，不过了乌族家，乌族家外的中山县的没把钱呢，地外地张，我吃个地段，吃个，干嘛讲啊？你就出去的了，老出去是对吧？想要嘛的。但中山县呢，三路当的，但是隔离，或者第六个路中到处有万，到哪到处不多。我确实个的，一个地就过马来斯，送到不了三这个说的，苏德拉老也就过马来斯，确实个苏德拉那肯定是结果了，这些结果有，大概是我牛毛结果那读到的结果嘞，什么了刚才讲的三路当的这当然，刚才的修穷的这个嘞，我说这个说的这个。三个团呢，缺三路当去这玩意呢，你可是一万超过用不着，哦，第二缺钱呢，我缺的来话缺我那点了哇，第二缺的隔离，我确实该买了吧，名单啊马单啊，三路当个团呢，这个说的牛毛用的给的可能是这个多，矿中用的可能是这个多，现在用的可能是这个，中间三路当了用的大，第二钱可是隔离一万的，我但缺我那点差个有了哇，所以的明白的也不这样多呢。乌族家没个钱，你这隔离可是跟一万团的隔离，我他所以到那些那个嘛，让新的到那些就没了哇，这个啥玩意呢？这个嘛，啥不都看见有嘛的。
So it's in the case, in Asian tradition, you often find that the parents have a natural kind of faith and love and devotion to Dharma and the Dharma practice and so on, whereas their children may not have that interest at all. And in some cases, it's sort of like for the sake of tradition, the parents might insist and push force the children into, attending the temple and doing what they do. And this, of course, has the opposite effect of turning the kids off the Dharma itself, and they express no interest in it. And so this is kind of counterproductive. So it's much more important that rather than insisting that one's children follow in your footsteps, to actually just show the fruits of Dharma engagement, of Dharma practice, so the good example, to show them, the children themselves, how you are kind of transformed by the Dharma. They recognize, oh, in the past you were, quite harsh and critical, whereas now you're much calmer. You see a lot less anger, you're much more happy in yourself, and much more calm in the face of adversity, etc., etc. And so they see the proof of Dharma, and that this then might actually, spark an interest in them, to ask, why is this? How is this happening? And then it gives you the opportunity. But not to emphasize, that, oh yeah, you need to recite this mantra, you need to read this sutra, you need to do this ritual. This is really, for young people, it doesn't hold a lot of interest. And what is far more important is to center on and focus on the reasoning of the Dharma itself. That inherent reasoning ability that transforms and changes one's behavior. And I think they have much more affinity towards that sort of approach, and very, very important to show how, through this kind of reasoning, one can actually start to calm and one's mental afflictions, to reduce the influence of mental affliction, and that it's a kind of really skillful means of centering on Dharma as a means of altering our way of thinking, in order to improve our lives. And that this is the real Dharma in any case, isn't it? And that to really focus in this way, I think, is a lot more skillful. And so if one can, through that, awaken the Buddha nature, the seed of Dharma within, then the children will naturally want to investigate further and see the benefit of Dharma for themselves. If not, then of course that's another case. That's another story altogether.
But kanjata read the seba chech the and so kasura so ngone nyamne chene and kolo chikaso pajo de la ta nuba tetwach kagi shen mayin bachene so ge nyamne che and juatene pena sazan namju sazan ye nangula and chikaso argue mongbu chiguyana argue the new taye chöki 지금 가서도 다 냠내 쟤네 아니 지금 도나 제반에 쟤네 아니 지금 파조 식도자 배주 당에다 아니 가세자 되게 용도다 직질을 생굴 숙체다 다에 패스 숙체죠 아니 부고주가 돈을 이만줘야 사장 nen고리 임바이네 오 아니 지금 나주 제반이나 아니 심바데 나주로 도나래 오뭐 뭐이나 코이나 다지 니마 들려라면 다 나주도 도나 제반을 수지 야제 조도 서바배 고양 못 차샤 서 파죠 되게 안 도나 용의 정도로 도나 용의 정도로 어때 제 나님한테 오스트레일리아 당벌레네 지가서 노쇼바게 당가서 미소게 나 영화지 가트로스나 좀더 인디고 요네 당한테 강에 들을 책도 강에 들을 삼로 근데다는 약이랬어 기재 지단 줘 봐. 들은가 빼 영화 줘서 오 오늘 전에 와다가서 나 삼로 돈에 디기 줍도 소고도 와. 근데 샤조가 릭지기나 다 디자 또 자는 냐마이는 샤조에서 뭔가 강에 책도 숫자를 가르쳐나 약이랬어. 또 바카르도나 약이랬어. 기재 트리트먼트 삼로 근데다는 거는 책도 컴포지션에도 와. 컴포지션에도 다미 최신경다 개발나다 여러분들 시험 먹어버렸대. 이는 지난 미만으로 컴포지션과 노천나가 내내 아니 저기 디워틀랜드의 용 아디샤스나 되거든 디워틀랜드 오스만 버려. 근데 디워틀랜드 용한테도 뭐지 딱 강에 들을 책도 아니 삼로 컨스탄나 약이 됐어. 안티문에 전에 강에 세다보다 라마문에 여봐줘다. 다 수타라 가르도나 약이 됐으나 다디 수다라 도에 페인도 연구를 돼 이는 카도들라 강에 대해 세도에 더 카보로 와다. 카보로 와 가서 강에 제 삼로 땅저거 터는 요데 삼로 땅저거 터는 매버서 그러면 더 수다라 더 주고 그다 가보시라는 와.
So this is important in this awakening of the Buddha nature, and that that once that is the case, then it's that child's own capacity that comes to the fore for their own particular transformation. But it's really the kind of the example itself is far more powerful than the words, and so that if they notice that their parents who have in when they were younger used to argue quite a lot and use a lot of nasty language towards each other, where they see that greatly reduced, where they see a great deal more harmony within the family, and this is something that they'll pay attention to and wonder how that is the case. And so that's the proof of the pudding, as it were. And so it's very, very important that one is actually living that Dharma oneself, if one wants children to also have an affinity towards and a love for the Dharma. And it's very, very important that that the children see that improvement, that something is really working for the better here, and that you become a good example. It's very interesting that the approach from the difference in approach, kind of by and large, from the Western way of thinking and the Eastern way of thinking. And I first noticed this in the Geshe Center during lots of interviews where people would come and normally they'd have some problem that they wanted some resolution to. And the Western approach would be that they would come and say, look, I have this problem. How should I really think about this? What's the way I should think about this? And I really kind of like when I would hear that, I became very inspired. Actually, I really enjoyed these interviews because this was an approach that was going to be effective. That you could see the person was willing to actually change their thinking in order to overcome the difficulty. Whereas the Eastern approach is more like this. They would explain their problem and then ask what they should recite to overcome the problem. What sutra should they recite? How many mantras should they recite? And so I think this is less effective. In fact, the sutras are wonderful, but they don't directly get to the issue of mind transformation in the face of problems and conflicts and so on. And so I think that the Western approach there would have been more effective. And so this is just something I've noticed, and I think that it's best that we kind of take control of the necessary change in our own hands. And that means that we are centered on how we need to adjust our own thinking in order for that particular problem or any particular problem from having such a debilitating effect over us.
我的这多，他感觉原来也没下脚给这个说的到其他米给这些其他米三路团的觉得这个的我的开办那的嘛不要了吧？那其他米拿落了，这个对他说那没三这个送了比多少那个没有抢着拿我的掐起，但做的对吧的那个应该的，因为我其他但送了别对，你说三路当个团的觉得你个送这个结果呢？个错解啥？考到刚才的没有差，忙完了刚才的忙用的，但骗我用过我他用过的，我他感觉送这个团的节奏给这么一个人，但是中国的送了对吧？中国给考到刚才的些谁的都是考不清楚的，因为他感觉我开发个桌上叫他三路当个团呢，他个没有说他的用过不多，三路当个团呢没有说他的用过不多，我的那个说了从哪的中国的我那真的我这个。他说了的，我那张那个哪吒的我怎么说去了吧？哪吒我真的，他哪吒没有说他的，对，干了刚才我这边说去，我也不了，大也不知道，我真是。
And so, of course, I'm aware here that it's easy to speak in kind of cliche terms of Western or Eastern here, and that it's obvious that people are very, very varied. And unfortunately, that the Dharma is so vast and profound that it's able to cater to all these differences. I suppose that the best approach is that one has studied and has assimilated the teachings, the great treatises and the sutras and the teachings of the Buddha, and then really contemplated on them, really thought about them, put them to the test within one's own logic and one's own thinking. And from that, then one is able to make far more skillful choices. This is probably that best approach to taking the faith that comes through learning and apply one's own critical faculty to affect one's personal transformation. That's probably the best approach. And so it's in the end, it's got kind of like transforming our own thinking, and through our own thinking and based on the data or the information that we've derived from the Buddhist teachings.
Garina mena rangi tone rangi kaso the nyamle ineta shela pemba tuwe ineta that diga gande jimbana ngoyu gnezu tumba tona jogorwa tangba ngoyu gnezu shimba chene and gadechina meba kaso the nyamle yabo chagido soso gerda shimba chene pendo je de gandechina and pendo je tugudo da ngoyu gne nga dyoba de dos de dig pengu marwa ngoyu gnezu tumba tona and shela pendo je tuye ngoyu gnezu da tumba tona rangi nyamle je tuba jeta ngoyu gnezu gone da dogo요 봐. 안 디게 뭐유게 내주도 심바체네. 아니 거기 셀라 펜바트웨이나 최고도나 펜바트웨이 뭐이네 딱 근데 상승의 돈에 펜바트웨이나 근데 지금 뭐유게 내주도 심배 돈에 아니 데이터 tumbe 돈에 펜바트웨이. 랑이 냠내 제 이마이네 뭐유게 내주도 심배 돈에 아니 랑이 냠내 제도 같이. 나디 지금 나 되바지겠지. 되게 펜토고요 마. 딱고 그 대부민국의 여자 대부민한테 뭐유게 내주 tumbe 돈에 대부 data rectum debut younger wa. What you get the way you can never shame it to that check what did it.
So the bottom line is that one must become aware of the actuality of the situation, the reality of one's present situation, whether one is in terms of one's own personal practice or in terms of the degree to which that is helping to benefit others. So in both contexts, it's very, very key, very, very crucial that one is aware of exactly what the situation is, the reality of that situation. And one cannot, place too much emphasis on that. It's extremely important. It's not a question of, what I want to happen, what I would like to happen, what I want to be out of it, or thinking of the ripening result and so on of this. If one is behaving according to actuality in terms of one's own practice or in terms of benefiting others, the result will take care of itself. And so this is very, very important to consider. And so that's of course why we are studying like we are. This is the whole key thing, to be able to understand, remain within the actuality of the situation. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any necessity for study at all.
Zawale mela sabdan jachetan keba meba primemi menda choge chenala tsumba gube kundu che.
So then the second of the subheadings was the particular analysis of the thinking with regard to the receptacle, or that is the one who is receiving the teachings. Verse number 89 makes this again more clear. It reads, again, Dharma should not be explained, nor to a woman unaccompanied by a man. The vast and profound should not be taught to lesser beings, although I should always pay equal respect to the dharmas of the lesser and higher beings.
감다 또 가서 소소 나 소소라 nga shen di yosana kan yoyo di she me bacha an duja khorala garisha na pendo cha yobati 是，我今天因为这本来这个告诉的本来我那这个本来就告诉的本来这个年度的胸当，软件的胸当，贴挂前边胸当，这个用啊的，我看不到听不见呢，三节了送也特别贴挂前边地那叫哪买包胸把就告诉的他那边送也有的，因为呀对这个看不到听不嘛，说对这的偏头买包因啥呢？그 뒤에 컴퓨터 투바잖아 요거도 다가는 좀 더 시용해야 되더라 좀 더 시용해야 돼 가서 저거 산재가 투고라 나 삼로당다 민대와 시위에 좀 말해 타도다 저 가서데 가서래다 이게 뭐 이게 내주대 우마베게 다가서 종로도 차대기 요때 내가 너도 모르고 알아 아니 저 가서래 다 간제 저게 년 가서래 다다데 제라마던 도대바다 셈자바 낭편주가 개발 연구도 와 와다 되네 용해서 가서는 뒤에 컴퓨터 투바전에 연구해서 가들 편도 제고 해서 코로나 편 되네잖아 아니 편토 치슈도 용해 임바 인자 아니 컴퓨터 투바전에 받다 땡고에도 개침보려서 뒤절로 신도 매발라 아니 사바의 자체에 땡바이나 콜 편도고 매바 인자 코로나가 컴퓨터 투매기 아니 지가서도 빼나 지가서도 지금 코로나가 컴퓨터 tumba잖아. 때바이나 아니 딜라데네다 림베 로에 니바 야제 신도 아니 권에 야대 쪽으로 와. 템게네 시잖아. 와다 대수무 여러분. 랑게 가리 셰 요바데 많이 받자. 두제 코로나 레르와 그런 것도 랍다 개개지 차샤와이나 미게 가서데 단데데 부고 주저 킨더가든라 코로나 로다 tum바지 셰오로 와. 아니 데네 진짜 당보 레네 진짜 당보 코로나 로다 tum바자. 아니 부고 코로나 게페나 부고 충전을 하려고 해서 그 기계 거나 부고 충전해서 지기도 와. 부고 충전해서 그 가서데 지 계좌 세다 남주 된다 지기도 가서 뒤 비나 봐 주니. 제고 여자 니도 tum바지 전화 부고 그 삼감을 딱딱 줘두고 열와. 거라가 삼감도 tum바지 줘고 유도. 와다 대수무 열다 되려. 가서데 와들 저는 가서 자체에 최어서 미셔봐. 와들 저
So here is describing where the disciples may be unprepared for, say, a certain teaching, then the vast and the profound should not be explained to them at that time. And this is actually just following really in the footsteps of the Buddha himself, who taught very, very carefully according to the dispositions of those who are asking him questions, those who are listening to teachings. And if the disciple was not ready for a particular teaching, then the Buddha would not give that level of teaching to that disciple. And always only taught what was of most benefit according to the disposition of the listener. And that's why, you know, we have, for example, 4 tenets systems or 4 schools of tenets. And so we have come from those who are capable of really assimilating the middle way schools. Then the Buddha taught them that kind of in line. And then those who weren't, he taught the Vaibhashika or the Sutrantrika systems, and that all in kind of in accordance with, in harmony with where the particular student or disciple was at that particular time. And so that's the way that we are advised to give teachings also. And this is really no different to, say, mundane kind of school. When teachers are teaching different schools, they'll teach differently, of course, to the foundation level or the prep level than they do to, say, the higher level of schools. And you will see going into, say, a prep class where the teacher is actually not only teaching kind of very basic levels to that class, but actually also acting and speaking in accordance with the way the children themselves kind of speak. So they're kind of like really acting out in accordance with what is most beneficial, what's the most skillful way of getting the message across to these children. And therefore, you know, that's exactly what the Buddha is saying, what we're saying here too. One must teach according to what the disciple is able to assimilate, able to take on.
다가는 결론기 팀도 개발 매바 비매 찍고라야 미노서래 다 그나 결론기 안에 지금 최셰살라 안에 가서 팀도 시매발라 안에 비매 찍게발라 최셰 미쳐봐 어떤데 미노서래 다들 인바자 콜링실하고 여바 인사 링실하고 여바 인사 와다데데데 안 다가는 이제 태과 멤버다 태과 초지 최나 상해 개와쳐와 그래 나가 이제 태과 체중계 아니 쳐라 어디 야가리 뒤 도가리에서 예와치에 뒤에 아니 뒤에 저번에 추봉 차되게 요래 근데 인바진사 로아다가 저제 배나 되게 근가 산제게 살아 티에게 다가자 가서도 산제게 살아 티에게 아니 거기 가서도 탑계게 아니 람지 차대도 와 람디 상하래 람디 상하마래 셰 매바래 가서는 뒤자지 가서도 타도 치사데 타도 대바 찍도 좀 인자 타도 상게 애들이 이나 다디 코 림바신도 로아 레 당보와 찍 당보 뭐도 공부하지 마다와나 아니 산제기 공부 토발라 남주 현대 민다와 고고요 근데 뭐도 공부하지 좀 그것도 다 뭐도 공부하지 좀네 뭐도 공부 주고를 대신에 지금 막 되길 때는 타바지 마담나 타면도 타바죠 타바덤네 아니 라니 집어 시대를弄소나 야디 편도고도 타요마게 섬제 담제고 된도 거다 림바스도 거 팀게 소리래도 와 좋아 고마게 팀게 소리래도 와 아니 근데 임바에서 어디 디상할 때 누가 했어요 말 상에게 그 네가 타바다 산지가 살아 줘야게 아니 가서도 딱 간자 지금 안티 가서 람라나메 봐 차대도 네가 근갈에 연대 통도와 쟤네 연대 통도와 쟤 로아다 어떻게 그 상에게 예와 맞춰 쟤네 어떻게 그 산지가 살아 줘야게 딱 간자 지 고소다 다 지금 튕게 아니 현대민다고 지금 봐도 뭐 하고 또 봐지죠 초봉을 내 마사디게 전부래 송구여래 아니 학도도 배나 대과 중국의 람냠래 지금 대과 집에 넣어도 말하죠 코로나 뒤 초차도 대과 중국 람도 초차돼요 로한다 기본 딩글 람다저 코로나 초차돼요 로아 초차 대자 맞아 배나 지금 낭바다 낭바 마인베 예와지 채와 있네 배나 즉 릭직 답변아 직대 제법을 켈랭게 지나 직대 제법을 켈말려 봐이나 안에 상비 레 망고지 좀 하도 와서 코로나를 초차돼요 봐 초차 딜라 때문에 안에 거지 가서데 상비 레 망고지 좀 두고 요래 잡아도 니제 나서 뭐 검투고 요래 뒤면에 오다 직대 제법마다 다 매도도 삼사게 야 체달라 후에 내가 돼 요바 인자 용어도 오다들 간제 소소소 그때 게다 소소소라 초차도 가서 딜라 때문에 아니 게레만 뭐지 좀 두고 요래 차도가 뒤나 상에게 예와체 저는 미리 뭐 초봉을 내서 되죠 안대다 먹을 배나 들어가 지용 돈을 거 튠델레 누구도 뒤 야가래 뒤 도가래서는 그 튠델레 누에 대해서 와 먼저 하모니도 시위게 해서 뭐 와. 좋아. 아니 뭐요 근데 저나 뭐요 근데 저 돈에 셔봐인데 소소를 가리 편도 채우고 약속을 와. 다디 소소를 약속 이면나 강가를 약보해서 납도해요 말로 와.
So of course, even though it's, in this particular case, then it says too that for a fully ordained monk, that they again, so this line where it says, "Nor to a woman unaccompanied by a man," in this particular case, is referring to a woman unaccompanied, can't be accompanied by a fully ordained monk entering the teachings, and that also. That this comparison that one can make between the kind of so-called lower vehicle and the so-called supreme vehicle about what is better and worse, what is more or less logical and so on, that should be very much avoided, because it means one is engaging in the negativity or the fault of abandoning the Dharma, disparaging or abandoning the Dharma, which can be very, very heavy. And so one must take special care to have equal respect with all the different so-called vehicles of the Dharma, and pay equal respect to them as an actual practice. And this is important, even though we're understanding that the ultimate is that we all try to attain the state of enlightenment and to be of benefit to benefit all sentient beings. But of course, there are many different stages and many different levels of that path. And one is kind of really obliged to practice the path that one has the most affinity for, based on what we think our own capacity is. And indeed, when one is able to make that choice, whether it's to aim for the higher rebirth of a human being or a celestial being, or one then moves on further to open up that motivation to attaining, ultimate peace for oneself through attaining liberation from cyclic existence, or moves on from that with the Mahayana ideal to work for the benefit of all, therefore to attain enlightenment in order to best be able to do that. That's really, all of these are valid choices, depending on where we are at, and that one understands the vast quantity of conducive conditions that one must have to be able to genuinely practice, say, the Mahayana ideal. That in that context, that whatever one path that one is taking on, one is practicing, and that one is kind of sees that one has that one's affinity for that and one's capacity for that path is very much in line with what that path is offering, then for you, that path is supreme. So there's this talk of supreme and not supreme paths. That path is supreme for you. And so even, you're talking about your goal of attaining liberation for yourself alone, that path is supreme for you. And it even goes beyond being Buddhist, even to non-Buddhist paths, those who really hold to the creator God concept, and they want to practice according to the teachings of that particular flavor. That path is supreme for them. And so that means that we must be very careful to kind of not disparage other levels of Buddhism or other paths indeed, and that we just are aware of the different levels and depth of, say, love and compassion that are being presented in these paths. But to move to any other kind of judgment is really in danger of going to an extreme, and it's particularly this fault of abandoning the Dharma. And so rather than any kind of judgment as to what is better or worse, it's far, far more important to sustain harmony. This is much more important. And so kind of, that people will know what's best for them, but one must never think that what I am doing is best for all. That's just illogical and impractical.
감다 매바 민자와 인도 고 감다 매바 민자 원게 안 되게 그 편도 지당대 민자와 중국으로 와 다들 네가 먼저 신배 토네 아니 강가를 구세 지야지 난 하도도 먼저 심제 강가를 디기 되는 얘기가 지금 봐이나 아니 코나를 디기 연구 여봐 이나 아니 먼저 강나 제주와 로 앞에나 코나 출루가리 만나 좀다 가리나 들 코나 문에 코나 디기 연구 여봐 이나 어도 먼저 제수이나 제거지로 와
So that, each, of course, will find appealing that which is appealing to their own particular disposition and their own particular aspirations. And so they are benefited accordingly. And so there's a variety of benefit that arises depending on what one has an affinity towards. And that's absolutely, absolutely fine. And so, from our point of view, we're determined, we're committed to bringing happiness to all sentient beings. And therefore, if others are happy, following the path they are happy, then our natural reaction to that should be to rejoice. We're fulfilling that particular goal. They are happy in what they're doing, therefore I rejoice in that.
더 뭐여기 내줘야 감도 몇번 민자 유여바데 배 상계 좀 된 되게 배 세부 뭐지 못하는 것도 와. 다 뭐여기 내줘 유여바 인바 인자 아니 유여바데 말아서 못해 제도. 아니 산제가 송래 아니 장에 용해야 돼. 가서 장등 가서 예든 용해야 돼. 내줘 감도 몇번 민자 온거 연구 여 봐. 다 장등은 예든 연구 여때 이나야 배나 그 장동의 도지 인바 이나야 코랑 송사가 유들 예전 차대요. 지 능신 냠내 제국고 요래. 야, 송사가 유들 예전 차대요. 지 능신 냠내 제국고 요래. 어떻게 저 근데 이거서 그 지금 장애 용해다 되게 갖고 감도 매번 민자와 여바 인자 아니 장애 용해 되지. 아니 감도 매번 민자와 여바데 산제게 아니 저기 택바 최종 아니 저기 동아 다 산제가 아니 그 년도 대관에 타도 아니 나라메 그 바게 아니 산제가 아니 저기 대바 용조라 아니 저기 도나지다 아니 될 때는 감다 매번 먼저 여바다 산제 그 전에 집에 나로래 감다 민자 여바 인자 아니 저기 남자의 민자 뭐 쉬우지 용대데 아니 될 때는 용대도 못 되는 것도 다 될 때는 아니 주로 심바 되게래 왔다 감다 매번 민자 온거 되게 용 조사래 아니 되게 용 조사래 안다 용하지만 되게 편도 용 대바도 아니 못 돼 용도 아니 될 때는 그보다 지구를 용해 준 것도
So one of the great advantages of the Buddha Dharma is that we can, ourselves recognize how it accords with the actuality of situation, and that once we can recognize this, we can, with a lot more kind of, I would say, trust in the information that's given, and also. It's very clear that the Buddha taught very, very many different levels of teaching and different aspects of teaching. And it's very clear that he was speaking to the different dispositions of sentient beings. Likewise, the sense then, the teachings themselves have been classified into that which is interpretative and that which is definitive. And so it's a very, very, when we understand that too, that that some sutras are very much interpretative, but yet according to different dispositions, they're that which is to be practiced according to that, and that again speaks to the particular dispositions and aspirations of those who see the truth of those particular sutras. The Buddha taught, the different vehicles, the sutra vehicle, the tantric vehicle, again, understanding very clearly the needs of and dispositions of a wide, vast, indeed, immeasurable variety of sentient beings who are eager to listen to those teachings. And so kind of like this is, very, very important to understand within the Buddhist tradition itself, but also, of course, outside of that, and to understand that, other teachings and other teaching traditions have arisen to fulfill the need of, again, people who have different dispositions and require different teachings. And so that's why we need to have this respect and appreciation for all the different spiritual traditions.
다가니 셰베나 저기 상하게 나로 차샤나 규대시 소소 나로래 하민자와 먹고 용거래. 근데 하 된속에 아니 다게다 아니 저 디게데 민자와 먹고 쉬우지 용거래. 아니 다가니 셰 라메 나로 쳐다나 아니 하도도 데가서 이담을 하민자와 아니 시장 나서봐 시와 잡고 되는 나서봐지. 아니 다가니 생게 데가서 되게 다게다 다가니 생게 아니 기림다 돼서 리미자 먹고 좋은 거 같다. 그 가르치는 거 같아서 뒤에 감다 매번 민자와 이마 인사 아니 그 나서봐 창구여 봐. 아니 다가니 저거 다 상하 가서 봐 차다 두다 자롱 튀레게 아니 조다 민자와 온게 아니 이단 걸 하민자와 차대해 준 거래. 차대해 준 거래. 但这里是我打这个看到明朝蒙古要在，第那里把差的，都对，嘛西差都差不多像第来，明朝忙的个用的有外在一当个他那说话就差用了就对了吧。
So even just concentrating on Tantra itself, we can see this process of differentiation according to the disposition of even the tantric practitioners and those who have an affinity towards that path. That first of all, we start with the 4 classes of Tantra within the tantric vehicle, and then we can see that all the different types of meditational deity associated with each tantra, whether they're peaceful or wrathful or increasing and so on, and that again, all of these speak to particular practitioners who have had this particular vision and initiated this level of practice. And we can see how it goes from more subtle to more and more subtle all the time in relation to what's happening within the channels, winds and drops and so on of genuine tantric practice. And within the generation stage and the completion stage, there's a vast array of deities and kind of the meaning within those deity practices and so on, all very much directly speaking to the individual dispositions of practitioners.
But because of the Idangal Haminda Mabu, you get the writer doesn't message or some called teacher, the Mare. Writer the Mambo did a Kora, some call it to Mambo Tia. The Lemarias, Tana de Tuje, Kasola, come down Meba Mindawa, Zalung Tile Mindawa, the Leonge, Idangal, and Tilla Pemba to Idan Hamindawa Chate Chungurwa. Idam Chatiach.
So it's not like some author invented all of these meditational deities, writing out the details of each one, but rather they have arisen according to the particular and individual disciples who have engaged in particular practices, and according to their own configuration of channel winds and drops, then this generated this deity and this form and so on.
The Chige demo the Pugu to demo remotion than a Harry Potter Sakarsa.
Harry Potter, yeah.
Or what did to Mambushu song with what did I say, Maria? This is taking some tongue, Jim Gorba. What the Lemata? The guy was going to come the Meba Mindawa, Tagati, and it's a long Tilega, Tota Minda, but someone Minda, and you just deal on the chat there, you don't have Minda, because some gets at the similar Pember to be a day. Pember to a new young to Zosa inside, and you just come to the Moko Channel.
So again, to distinguish it from, say, the Harry Potter reality, something that has come out of, it's just someone's thinking and writing it down, but rather here it is a disciple practicing, sincerely, accessing their channels, winds and drops, and that's very, the particular configuration of those is different for each and every disciple, and from that play of channel winds and drops then arises this particular meditational deity, and of course the deity into which they will arise is an enlightened being. Maintaining that individuality according to their own disposition, according to disposition of indeed their channels, winds and drops. And so it's something that's kind of like intimately personal in a way, from that particular own, that disciple's experience.
Today, my number Sanjay and chicken sugar that because of the chicken Chandun and Yedon Lasowadan, sugar that got to the Casura, to the Mindawa Lasowatan, Sanga, the Desamindawa is down. And come down, me one Mindawa second mix again. I need to water is water and the Latin chulu shamatic and Chigmunet and Tawata Mebadi. They get to it, or that Casole, 가서래 다 같이 되게 아니 연대 통투에치 연대 통투에 용투에 도와다 되게 어떻게 공부시에제 어들이죠.
And so I think that through this understanding of the Buddhist system leading to enlightenment, that we have both the teachings in classified as interpretative and definitive. We have the different tenet systems. We have the sutra and tantric approach, and so on. And we can see that this is due to the individual dispositions of disciples of different affinities and capacities and so on, and that I think it's important to especially recognize this when we look into traditions outside of the Buddhist tradition, and to understand that exactly the same thing is going on, that people have an affinity towards a certain approach, depending upon their own disposition, and that deserves our respect and appreciation. So the third subheading in this set was that one who has an affinity or has an aspiration towards the great and the vast should not be led towards a lesser vehicle. So here verse number 90 states, I should not communicate the Dharma of a lesser being to one who is a vessel for the vast Dharma. I must not forsake the Bodhisattva's way of life, nor mislead others by means of sutras or mantras.
다들 멤버라 사와티 맞죠 같이 다들 자체보게 너도 좋아질라 다 자체배 너도 좋아라 로 좋아라 대과침배 리젠데 임바이나 아니 매배쳐 라니 지보시도 되니까 로 시도 되니까 제게 아니 가서다 다 냠래라 자와치 줘 말했어 나 거라 로에 뭐 토아 이번 가던다 저 가서다 최땡게데 람치게데 아니 가서다 너 심바잖아 뇌의 심바잖아. 다 뇌의 심바잖아. 아니 만오와잖아. 아니 거리 맞춰와잖아. 땡고 열봐. 땡고 열봐. 다 땡고도 아니 되게 뇌되게 못쳐봐지 어떻게 좀 물어봐. 근데 임바자 다지 태바 첨배 최고 neuron지 임바 있나? 아니 거 태바 첨배 최나 봐. 맞지마도야. 디 태바 첨배 최디 디샤는 왔다 가자 그 가서데 라니 지보시도 되는 그 로딜라마 어디 계천보에서 데려쳐와서 누구 말했어. 지죠 말했어. 그래서 딱 이제 야 지금 태바치면 내도 뭐로 와들라 야 거기 기부된 게 저거다. 기부 충분 저거들 말티와 제도 뭐 연구를 왔다 가자. 맞지 연구를 왔다 가자. 거리 맞춰와지. 딱 이제 태바치면 내도 와제나 거다 태바치비 그 최대 마찬가지로 말이야. 라니 지보시도 되는 게 로라마 가서 람라 맞자와도 지죠 말했어. 거다 이제 두제들 팬고 연상 거 팬바데 딱그 뇌다 투마제 뇌 심배 돈에 다 팬도 치고 그래서 뭐야 봐 어디서
So here it's speaking about that for somebody who is a suitable receptacle for the vast, in other words, somebody who is kind of like a member of the kind of Mahayana vehicle should not be led to somebody who is practicing a lesser kind of goal, such as just achieving a peace for oneself. And so that this is again important that we from the point of view of the one showing the path or the teacher, this is important, and that they can recognize in the disciple or the potential disciple the kind of capacity that they have. And so therefore they will be able to make a non-mistaken choice with where to kind of have them enter the path, as it were. And this is important, and important that they recognize the importance of moving in stages along the path as well.
我的看这这我这个大概这个说说个人写就有的办法知道拍照这个个人那的对吧那的我出来的给起不是的吧是吧既然写开吧的给起不是的写开吧来这来给起吧的刚才这个那的写吧这的是吧既然写开吧的给起不是吧这来给起吧的刚才这个那个人把他过吧这的
So that, to understand in the capacity of the one who is hearing the teaching, and that what a capacity have they to understand what you're saying. And of course, on the one hand, it's important to have the eloquence of speech to be able to explain well, but even more important, to understand that the one you are speaking to has the capacity to really assimilate what you are saying and to understand what you are saying. And so it becomes quite crucial in that respect.
我的是，他感觉这九把元素多米加多的爱给甜米加是，他感觉我的他感觉这个看吧，他们的样练呢，样多的爱给是多的爱，多的爱给先提我米加我的个人蛮多啊，那么我们的恐怕了提的他们说特别出众，他感觉这个说的。 我这大概这个让个人马超啊，真的个人马超啊，真的贴的给起不认识个，他过去了，这多的啊，这个他这个说的这个说的，现在米家我是我那个这个米家的个人马诺啊，真他个人马诺啊，真的，但我们呢，恐怕了呀，让个人马超啊。 如果说的，如果让马诺啊，让车上啊，让个人马超啊，我到底该怎么说？我到底我是个人，我真的没叫我个人马诺啊是，让我们的恐怕了，提的他们说特别出境给交吧了，用说多没叫我的，他这个的，你这个说的他这个说特别出境年牙签的。 如果他中来给龙，对嘛就给送，对嘛就给人给东北写了呢，这个，讲究身边个，伢们他伢们出去，这个他中来那3个年了，那3个出这个都把练了，我的个人嘛，瞧是没写的中国的所谓是，我听是。
And so the rest of that verse talks about how one should not mislead through sutra and tantra. And so this is speaking about, being able to recognize the path that is the correct path, the path that is the complete path, and the path that is ordered in stages, going in stages, going from, a lower and lower kind of understanding into a higher and higher level of understanding and indeed commitment. And so this one has to take along one's students in that proper order. But at no stage should one forsake the ethical conduct associated with the individual liberation vehicle. This is quite important.
我的讲说，刚才在初中就学完了，用手码头啊。 用手多米加点是我的，是吧？我的感觉就我的讲，他感觉这个这个说特别出众是，他说特别出众了，这对了，他感觉这他本来就是他的不是该用这个，我他的这个他中了给弄，对嘛就是给你，对嘛就是他马他了呀，给你，我的那把这个过一起我的讲。
And so then, in terms of the ethical conduct associated with the Pratimoksa vows, referring to those who, where it's more suitable for them to be a fully ordained person, or a not fully ordained person, or a lay person, and to approach the Dharma from that position. 我的想，他说把身经给身接受送信，你把每个月交把了拿把了你去，给吧是吧？
도티바 오자 다 당부 개바 샤바들 숨제 류기 줄란 녀바다 류기 줄람지에서 녀바다 제시 셴마데바 뽕바 람라 소바사 됴메세 아니 지다 자와 녀외 군주 지다 자와 오자 숨제
So another main heading is how one should train in one's behavior so that one is not tainted by fault in protecting the minds of other sentient beings. And this is two different approaches. One, an extensive explanation, and then a summary at the end. In the extensive explanation, there are three subheadings. The first is how we should abandon the kind of faults of physical behavior, because it will cause a lack of faith in others. And number two is what we should do when we're actually showing the path or giving directions. And three, how one should sleep, how we should actually lay down to sleep.
Jila soba long chebe chuda tangla doa me kagang wadan tajada khadana ne samicha kangba jangde mitu de lakwa nyambar minyawo shenpa meden neda do pime shenda chigmecha chigden mate juwa ku tongwa dangde pangbar jaasya.
And so the first of those subheadings again was really because it might cause a loss of faith in others, we should abandon any physical kind of fault. And verses 91 to 93 cover this point. And they read as follows. When I spit or throw away the stick for cleaning my teeth, I should cover it up with earth. Also, it is shameful to urinate and so forth in water or on land used by others. When eating, I should not fill my mouth, eat noisily, or with my mouth wide open. I should not sit with my legs outstretched, nor rub my hands together. I should not sit alone in vehicles, upon beds, nor in the same room with the women of others. In brief, having observed or inquired about what is proper, I should not do anything that would be disliked by the people of the world.
Sembeasa Katan Sotu Societa, never Jagaina, the toothbrush the Dero, Singji, never Chigel sing there, sing the sort of program. That Jagal Tony is Tonga, the Tisha Yor, singing the agent to the Manguya. And the Chukawaga, you could what is it that in the same Chijo Masugo, what I do to them college, I take it off. Because Sojin and Chimata Doata, Chimat. 도와다 디 제소다 살아 소바다 가제 출로 유바이네 바 사자 구조절에 디바 유사다 사마 갑자다 그 최대한 대화 차되기도 지금 미도도 하고 마도에 안 최대한에 편 어떤지 명명 벌써 명명 받자시 명명 받지고 레스펙트 대대리 육샤서다 초말레게지 더 명명 받지고 그랬어 아니 상제다 나블라 소바 셴다 투모도 론주베다 그래서 상제라서다 자가 있는다 자가 돈이 뭐 시그레지 죽주 된들 빼줘보여 가봐고 쪼봤다 건조 가서 돌을 빼봐 유식 말와 추배주 당으로 죽주 잡고 된들 죽주 여사들 말 밑에서 강바 먹고 연에 빼줘보여 다들 강바에서 제출되던 쪼봤다디 거기에 샤람들 주고도 어떤데 전 어디가 이제 어떤데 다 투모고 론치에서 추된들 지조만 뒤잡아 있는다 녀바에 싸그래라다 Shantideva Jugurwa, that is Jola Yabum do something Chagua, and how do you buy Sagua? Tomorrow launch of Chuda Tangla Sovatona, Shenji Mebe, Namia Domicho, Shengi Meba Younger, and how don't do that? Shentiba Sagre, and two together in Shen Tungo Javasagua, and Chudele Yabu Yomarwa, what I didn't Negamu Chatua, and said a car can't, says our done, to cut down the side about Yajuta, and short children, Nigala Jango Mani, but short children, Kayajilu, and then 저도 마좀 그래서 되게 지게 인도 kopesagre 나한테 카타는서 같이 강화다 네가 땅 많이 봐 같이 야 쉬어져 아니 짝짝라서 봐 다체도 많이 봐 같이 당네 사와미 자고서 어떤 칼라사나데 진행체스 안 두배 간장 소소 대회가 강반이 짱데 미도전 강반마 짱네 마대 딱까지 마구베 나바데 치어봤다 마치 건강을 가서 저 일로 초대해서 되고 그랬다. 미시마 당화기에 오다 대단 야보도 삼사도 오다도 문에 전에 미치 가서 대박기에다 저미 당화기에 오다 야보도 삼사 가나기에 지금 저바지 지고 그랬다. 간제 있네. 어때도 저 아니 라반이 뒤직도 냠벌 미냐오서 다간제 지 다디 냠벌 미냐오서 또 맞아 된데 그래 된대신 때 다디 또서 마구바서도 와 마구바서도 왔다 그나 마구바서도 와 미냐오서 아니 달라 소바 쇼바다 아니 메덴다 네다도서 저 니도 많이 배서 비매 현다 아니 현지도 내가 미쳐서 니도 많이 비매 현다 현지도 내가 맞아 딱 와서 맞다서 근데 저 현지도 내가 미쳐서 나도 결혼을 끼지 시고래 다 소인바에 개체모도 그 용다 요에 내가 제래도 와 그래서 선물을 미개라서 뭐 용다 용도 와 또나 직대 맞대봐 주와 군사 아니 또나 다 간자제 랑게 추게 편도 지엘라 아니 괜찮아요 중국으로 왔지 최고도 교회는 랑게 편도 지엘라 뇌 되게 맞대봐 주사 맞대봐 주와 군라다 삽사치고서 군라란게 토만내서 그래서 란제에서 란제 통나서 다마 랑게 다 통화인 랑게 되는 좀 어처바이나 남자 되는 마요에 탑시지 마토야 아니 현라 되게 아 얘기 지단 또 마티바들 연구도 했어 나 소소 sem단 여부 된잖아 아 뒤에 다 된데 지금 가서捐자 된데 마요에 탑시지 저와 저 셔봐 저
And so really here, these verses are, again, part of, the kind of behaviors that we need to be mindful of from the time we get up in the morning till we go to bed at night, and that they're, really trying to avoid engaging in any kind of habitual behavior that might cause a loss of faith in others. This is the point here. And here, referring to particularly here the fully ordained bodhisattvas, and that when using wood for cleaning the teeth, which used to be a very common tradition before the invention of the toothbrush, but you often see it in India anyway, people using a little bit of wood to clean the teeth. And they say you need to kind of like when you throw that away, that stick away, you should cover it up and should not spit afterwards. That this is considered to be disrespectful, and one has to be careful in that way, that you're not doing anything that is unclean. And that also in terms of shameful to urinate and defecate and so on in public and on kind of like land that is owned by others. And that again, this is kind of like, if seen to be the case, then that causes maybe a lack of faith in potential disciples and those who have a faith in the Dharma. And so one should really make sure that avoiding this, and that it's kind of seen to be kind of shameful, as it says there. And so we have to be very, very careful with this regard. And you can see sometimes in India where the places around where people live is often very soiled by that, because that's kind of a habit there to go and defecate outside because there's no toilets within, or you don't use toilets in the same way. And that when eating also, we have to be very mindful of how we eat, not to fill one's mouth too much, not to munch loudly, not to eat with the mouth wide open and so on, and to use just one side, one kind of jaw to chew on is appropriate. And again, as observing that Westerners are pretty good at this. They eat in a good way. And so to make sure that one is not causing, again, any kind of disturbance in the minds of those who might see this, that you are eating in a kind of a rough manner, and to leave that being. And also when sitting, not to stretch out one's legs straight out. And again, you know, that can be, you know, according to the individual, kind of very comfortable way of sitting, but it's about one who has that sort of affinity to the Dharma, that one is thinking of one's own physical postures and behaviors, and in trying to be as respectful as possible. And so here just one is being mindful of where one is doing this. And that not to kind of, it says either rub the hands together or, you know, sit with folded hands can be the case here. It can be seen to be disrespectful or sort of challenging in a bit, in a way. And then it discusses that point where sitting alone in vehicles, riding on horses upon beds, or in the same room with the women of others. This is, of course, specifically focused on fully ordained monks, but in fact, you know, to be behaving in this way with anybody else's partner, even in lay terms, is not considered to be a good form, really. It can cause conflict if one is too intimate with the partner of somebody else. This is all too apparent. And then in brief, it's saying here, having observed about all of this, one sees what, you know, is to be done and not done, that one is able to choose the modifications necessary in the correct behavior physically, that the way we hold our body and use our limbs, etc., so that they don't cause any lack of a loss of faith in others or trust in others, but rather the opposite, that people are seeing how controlled and subdued we are in all of our movements. So it's going to understand, just like there's 2 points here. One is that we don't incur fault from our own side, and the second is that we don't, as it put the mockers on and trying to benefit others, you know.
장주 선배 냠내 지에라 아니 심전을 구바다 제와다 아니 심전실을 편바트에 아니 심전실라 마녀바 다 마구바 마요기 심전실 녀바 마사야 쳐도 아니 경구리 요바이자 아니 야 주바디게디 아니 가서 디다 아니 디다 투베야 주바 디날 민이 디날 장 연나마나 아니 다단다디 거서 배천 잡으러 된데 다시 마구바 요에 마대바 요에 되게 지지요 말스 다디 된데 야 룽바 소소게야 조다 민자와다 조다 단다 망고제 자가가 조다 시샤제 수고요 와다 야 룽바 소소게야 조다다 검시 민자원게야 디다 투 미시마 마구바 봐요 되게 조다 투마데 시베도네야 냠레를 되게 로바자에 용구로 와 롱베 조당 투마테는 용거래 어떤 용거래.
And so on the one hand, of course, being you know, whether one is ordained or a lay person, but one is endeavoring to live according to the Mahayana ideals, then we are, you know, that much more conscious of showing respect rather than any chance of disrespect. We are very careful not to harm in any way, but rather to bring benefit in all situations. So it's kind of like a heightened mindfulness with regard to our physical behavior is here. It's kind of like taking on that responsibility. On the other hand, of course, you know, these particular traditions and are relative to India, where this text was written. But when we're in different countries, they follow different habits, different traditions. And so we kind of like make sure that we are in harmony with the particular traditions according to where we're at.
What in the channel, T to Naya, Konchok, the conditional Kuba Sigurime, Lugi, Namdu, conditional Kuba Sigurime, T young, Digital Maguba Sigurime, the Shimbaton Yanko, Tagda, Petutang to Bachene. But social Makaba Tegune.
So it'd be a question of really checking in other countries as to, you know, what is seen as respectful or disrespectful, what is considered to be, you know, kind of like a very big insult or not a big insult and so on, and to make sure that we adjust our behavior accordingly.
That the little Shasha, and what's done to do, Casa. That young teach you Casa. Also come in a door hard there, but in the Shana teach to yeah.
So let's leave it there for today.
You know, that get you the Gadesna, that to get the Ganga Casa de Chig Casole. Rangi Lu Na Yusung Digate and Geshe Chubek and Casa de Ta Geshe Chubenal Chutubachich. Or Geshe Chubenal Chutubachich. What that teacher and Chikala Satan in there and the Geshe Shetan in there and the Nietan in there. That condition by in there. A digger Ganga Casole Geshe Chubek and Namena Patsu to a church.
So in brief, really what's at the heart of these verses is that as a child of the conquerors or practicing the Bodhisattva path, we have to be really aware of our actions of body, speech, and mind to a kind of an extraordinary extent, that we are aware of how we're presenting when we're eating, how we're presenting when we're speaking, how we're presenting when we sit down or lie down, and so on, and that everything is appropriate.
Yeah, and that Ranga doing a set of Lama to be on a set of it, and Yokuba Shejus, and then and the Casoria. That comes on to our to cover Kiva in there, and it's a because of the way in the Soleta Casoreta. To assume you couldn't matter what you never into, and they got the Takaja de la Niavacho and Yanjun Kene, and de la Tawajamachona, Tabu, Sons of Combachen, Niavacho and Yanjun Combache, and then they get Lord and a Rangichibo, and the Permatapian Juso, Sons of Combache.
And so then bringing our mind to focus on the figure of the Guru Buddha in the space in front, and endeavoring to establish an appropriate seating arrangement on our own crowns. We focus on the sufferings within cyclic existence of wherever we are born in any of the 6 realms of cyclic existence. Then we are prone to any of the 3 levels of suffering. And so it's this thought, wishing to gain a definite emergence from this situation, this renunciation, bringing that to mind, and from that mental image of renunciation arises the lotus mandala seat.
That Chikaso the Simja Tamja to Sanja Koma to be singing Matikaba to Sechu. Lugi tend to Sechu, Lugi Chacha, Lugi tend to Sechu. Tarnisha Soso Sim Najiki tend to Sechu and Massing the Ta. Chikaso Tetus to set the member that Sevore. Then they do what are the money but Takarangala Kaja Kazam, Takarangala Simsha. Then they get 가서데 로티 된데 가자 가슴 예배 로티 아니 뼈마답제 랑이죠 뼈마답제 때도 님의 경우 약하고 주소 삼사차 저는 다 심지어 탐제기도 산제 구만 요원도 마다 탐도 토바지기 쓰는 두바지게 된데 그 두바지 아니 님의 경우 약하고 주소 삼사차 님의 때도
And so then this aspiration of I will attain the state of enlightenment, the benefit of all sentient beings, we focus on that I, that self, that has that aspiration, and ask, where does it exist objectively? And we go through the process of looking for that which is not found, arriving at the lack of objective existence, the mere negation of the object of negation, knowing that it is merely imputed by thought, but just focusing on that mere negation of the object of negation. From that very thought arises the sun disk mandala, which is placed on top of the lotus. And then knowing that we have this aspiration to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, that mind of enlightenment itself, and focusing on that produces the moon disk mandala, which is placed on top of the sun disk.
And then Dungin Nakal, Lama Shaja Singitella, and Sunday Chena, Pandits, Lama Rambocha, Ninga payment, Tagicho payment, Kadichu Kusu to Jongozu, so then the Sunday Chen, Sunday Tambicos of Pet. Nibacos of Shoe, Sumeco tension, Sanjay Kumamato with the chess, what I was you choose on the Kalkom. And then Yala to my Medeta Chawapi. Chanza want to choose over the Jesuit College. Chanza want to choose over Jesuit, which was just the Tamjata Champion War, such a British choosing method, reality in the but Sanjay and Dogan Nambasha, Itango, Janam, Niantaya means.
And then the invocation verse to the Guru Buddha in the space in front. Oh, glorious and precious Root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure moves from the space in front. At the end of the second, he comes to sit on the pre-prepared seat on our crown. And at the end of the third recitation, we have the certainty that the Buddha Guru will remain with us until we attain the state of enlightenment. We really rejoice in that fact, and then we make the spontaneous offerings of the 7 limbs of practice, as well as the mandala offering.
아니 딜레 아니 다 딜레 타와지 맞으면 지금도 생겨봐 줘 예조 고바시 아니 된데기 로티 아라랑이 닝데 뼈마다 깨져 주소 섭섭체 당연히 지금 심지어 탐자 산재 공부 중에서 나한테 제주는 대야 많이 받다 가는 거 심도샤 아니 된데기 그 가자가선 거 로티 가서대다 빼매던도 님 뼈마다 깨게던도 님의 경우 약하고 주소 섭섭 근데 심지어 탐제게도 산재 공부 요원도 마다 저보다 토바지 삼사지 공부시어도 아니 대시 아니 대대기 dum바디 아니 다외지 뭐 약하고 주소 섭섭 공부시 안텔라 받에서 라마를 못 다기 닝가 빼매다 거리로 구조도 좀 그렇죠 근데 순대 저 아니 지원 라마샤자 쓰게들 순대 저 대지원에 마 줘니 아니 랑닝가 빼마다 제대 가는 내수 섭섭체 아니 때 담배가서 배 니버서 수가 때도 산재 고마 마도 저 송송 선서 고마시 아니 되네 닝 빼마다 갑주는 남주 닝 내단 대가다 도저가 생각와 체가지 같이 근데 타고도 다해도 엄무는 다해도 엄무는 다해도 엄무는 서스들 아니 저 담배 순간 생각되게 아니 견되겠죠 근데 아니 되네 거래 치고라 아니 잠배가 순간되지 되네 아고라 난고들라 아니 된데가 순간되게 이게 숨고 되겠지 좀 숨고 되는 것들을 좀 고마시
So then again, we bring our minds to focus on the establishment of suitable seating arrangements at our heart center before inviting the Guru Buddha down. And so again, we consider the the sufferings within the 6 realms of existence, within cyclic existence, and knowing that there is no getting beyond suffering within that reality. And so we kind of start to contemplate on gaining that emergence from cyclic existence, the renunciation mind, and from that thought arises or appears the lotus mandala seat. And then thinking of the I wishing to engage in this, to do this, to attain enlightenment, the self in all its different aspects, really looking for this self-established self, and the not finding it, arriving at the mere negation of the object of negation, giving rise to the sun disk mandala. And then the aspiration we have to attain that state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, being the mind of enlightenment itself, the thought of that and abiding in that thought arises. From that arises the moon mandala disc. And then, oh glorious and precious Guru, come take a lotus and moon disc placed here on my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of that first recitation, the Guru Buddha moves down from the crown in through the central channel. At the end of the second recitation, arrives at our pre-prepared seat at the heart. And at the end of the third, again, we have that certainty that the Buddha will remain until we attain that state of enlightenment itself. We rejoice at that point. And that then the petals of the lotus fold over and are joined at the tips by a white 5-pronged semi-vajra. And then it is surrounded by 3 mantras. The first in a clockwise direction is the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. The second, the mantra of Manjushri, going in an anti-clockwise direction. And then the mantra of dependent origination, going in a clockwise direction again.
아니 랑게 닝게 그서 라마 샤자스게 네바디 아니 고송돌에 왜서 빠도 매버트나 랑게 지원에 간디가 바라 왜서 트는 르게 낭타자 바차바 청소 삼사자 뭐 참네 아니 랑게 토마메 디바레 캬바도야 아니 소아지바 마지막으로 미사마서 수련 참아서 좀가 낙선도서 로달서 미게 주고 그 주제 아니 세디엄 생가마 디가마 토마메 디바데가 찾아만 다네 나 제발 하나마도 보다 라진 하나마도 내가 컨디션 사이를 봐 다소 삼사자 다가 내생게 아니 세디야 생가마 대가마 토하면서 쏟아가 도 받아 가와 자주서 라와다 가와 상가에 다지다 가와 파다말라 마고바다 제발 로벌라 마고 조사바서 마도 구조소를 내벨 내지 담배 쳐본거 법의균들로 구하다와 습절을 내벨 내지 버서 디과미 집어서 나는 소수이 집어 다 집어 신집을 제소 원래 신기도 주바 신집을 제소 이러면서 돌되와이나 토리다 답에 계속 주바 코와다 예수고 예동 간지 싸워야 돼 장치 다도 좀 소스서 자서 다가는 신거 저 최주배 계좌 루게 나사 생게 동에 중식 코만요 봐 자롱 딜레 겨 다가는 신게다 뉴도 산제 고마토발라 아이 겨 치슈다 탐에게 나시 뭐지 탐에게 나시게 겨 탄자 장지단은 가나 탄자 다바라 잡아시 차수 서 어디를 공부하시.
So then from within the petals of the lotus, light rays begin to emanate from the heart center of the Guru Buddha within, permeating through the petals and indeed permeating through every cell of our body-mind continuum, from the soles of the feet up to the crown of the head, and so that we are absolutely filled with this pulsating, purifying light. Purifying all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginningless time, beginning with the 10 non-virtues, the killing, the stealing, the sexual misconduct, of the physically associated negativities, and then the verbal negativities of lying and harsh speech and divisive speech and idle gossip, and the mental negativities of covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view. It also purifies all of the negativities that we have done in this life, in the previous life, and the one before that, indeed going right back to beginningless time. it purifies all naturally occurring faults and negativities and all those that have been proscribed by the Buddha himself. It deals with the negativities of faults and downfalls associated with the Pratimoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, and the Tantric vows, that they are all purified, that the lack of respect that we have ever shown to any of our parents, to right up to disrespect to our gurus, etc. That also it deals with the negativities that we have personally done, that we have enticed others to do, that we have rejoiced in the doing of, and that it deals with all of the inconducive conditions that might hinder our perfect Dharma practice, such as any discomfort or illness or disease of the body, and any mental issues that we may have also. They are completely purified. And there is a recalibration of our elements, of our channels, winds and drops, and particularly focused on really transforming the major obstacle to our quickly attaining enlightenment, being ordinary appearance, that this way of seeing reality is transformed into pure appearance for us.
Then also the Shinto long the language, Lama Shaja and a good legitimate, so the Lama Shaja and a cooler Josu Samsacha. So the Shinto same the language, Lama Shaja and a two the legitimate, so the same the Lama Shaja and a tula Josu Samsacha. Rangi Lu Nga Yesunda, Lama Shaja and a Kusundo, Yemen the Josu Samsacha. Ti Dewa Neve Lot Takarangi, Tomba and Tedonis Mayishi Josu Samsacha. And Rang Nesa Nedia, New Gun Tanja, Lama Shaja and the Davish to Josu Samsacha. Ran Lama Shaja and a Kurjua. Rang Lama Sanjas Kurju, but the Kusu to Moyame Juata, Nala Shimaba Samatan, T. Tugale Lama Shaja and the talent, Simjaka talent about Junior, Simja Reda Lama Shaja and the Reda Timbalatene, Teta Tanjaja, Kijika Lama Shaja and Kusu to Moyame. Teta Nesa Nedia, New Gun Tanja, Lama Shaja and the Davish to Josu Samsa. Lama Simjata Lama Shaja and Kurjua. And it got the Kurjubata, and it dead to be cheto, and Kazakuzum Yamajua, dead to be cheto, Rang Jawakajawa, and to so Udema, Toba Patata, yes, and they were the Jadonis Wish, just so they look much up.
Then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. And I realize that my own body, speech, and mind now are inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of an enlightened being. And that this is something that brings great bliss and joy to my mind. And this combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place I am in also now is transformed into from its faulty, mundane status into the pure state of an enlightened being. And then from my own state, from my own mind, and realizing, of course, that that I am lacking any inherent or objective existence, I send out light rays from my own heart center as a Buddha, equal in number to all of the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon dissolving into them, and they are purified of all fault and rise as fully enlightened beings. And also the place that they are in is cured of all stain and fault and is transformed into the pure realm of an enlightened being. And so this is something, again, I can rejoice in. I can see that this leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment the merit that has facilitated this success, and myself as the agent of this virtue, all lack any objective existence and are merely imputed by thought. This understanding brings forth a sense of bliss again, which combines with the voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
tunje mune kora tende yongye ta kacha che ta samlo tangwa mune kora yongye ta kacha gyuri gyuwa sho ngwa che de ta wote gejen te tunje tsawa yongwa sho hakdon to ta tende yongwa la sanje koma ma to tamme ba sanje koma to wala jaju ge se nyamne ma cha tamme ba tende insa ta rangi jige deyi jungwa ine ta dongye jungwa ine ine ta nawa ine ta 타만 종이만 시바이네 되게 장주가 섭다 돈이 또 배시라 게게 튕겨를 주어쇼스 어때서 뭐하지 계속 뭐 튕겨를 주어쇼스 아니 주토막에 돌아 스스로 배줘야지 뭐럼 주고 말 배줘야지 강에 그래서 저 강에 저 자주 섭게 줄었대 강에 그저 저 년조게 줄이지 년조게 장주가 섭게 줄이지 대 돈이 또 배시라 게 줄이죠 대화 중간에 되는 시점 배주 땅도 받잖아 이 튕겨를 좋아이나 아니 거두이네 그래서 추진 이슈 잡시 샤마도 추진 이슈 잡시 정라 아니 그 그네네 튕겨 용한테 그러 튕겨 소소 뭐트를 배주 땅도 받자바이나 아니 링고 마도 봐 장주가 샘게도야 장주가 샘게네 링고 마도 봐 아니 사람과 똑같은 산제 공부 톱도에 다 용고 봐 어디를 용해 줄을 좋아쇼스 어디를 공부해
And that, of course, we understand that we're operating at the level of imagination and visualization here. How can it be so easy to attain these states? And yet, in our dedication, we make a strong determination that I will do whatever it takes to make sure that this is an actuality as quickly as possible. That in that context, I realize that there is no possibility, there's no choice but to attain the state of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings. And I know that therefore there's no choice but to perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. And so therefore I really commit myself now 24/7 to be able to change the way I perceive and interpret my reality, so that whatever happens, whether it's a suffering, whether it's a happiness, whether I'm sick, whether I'm on the point of death, it doesn't matter. I will definitely use every single incident and every single opportunity to lay down the causes, to increase my love, my compassion, to increase the causes for the attainment of the mind of enlightenment, and indeed to lay down the causes for enlightenment itself. And I'm determined to use every single moment like that. So there's no, that every condition becomes a conducive condition. There's no such thing as inconducive conditions anymore. I use all of life to lay down the causes to attain enlightenment as quickly as possible.
Lai ma san je do wa che ja ma lu ba de ye sa lai gu ma ra jo ja jo se jo re ma ge pa na ma ge yo che ge pa ya ma me ba ya con con do pe wa sho ga re ra ve ko xian gan de pen dan de wa ma le zhong ve tie re se wa dian jian jia zuo xia bie si dian pa do dian ju ro jie miao miao zhe
Great treasure of compassion not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losing Drakpa, at your feet I pay respects.
Okay, no